Okay, y'all. Numero cuatro. So I have a bit of a history lesson for y'all here. This was the first time I've ever seen this movie. I had actually bought this movie before on 3D Blu-ray and threw it away without watching it, only to buy another copy of it for this series. This movie came out in 2009. It came out right when I had started my freshman year of college. I was beginning my college journey. Not that that helped me at all, but a lot of life changes that were going on. And in the horror fandom, there was a bit of a versus that was going on between fandoms because Final Destination, the Final Destination, was coming out the same weekend that Rob Zombie's Halloween 2 was coming out. Final Destination was on number 4, Halloween was on number 10, even though it was the sequel to the remake. And I was a Halloween guy. Through and through, I could not give a rip about Final Destination at all. Halloween I cared about. I wanted to go and see it in the theater, but I didn't, which is not necessarily a life regret, but kinda. Um, I was talking with a guy. I couldn't tell you his name, even if I had someone who was like, "I'm going to kill you unless you tell me his name." I would make up a name because I could not remember this guy's name to save my life. This guy, I only interacted with him like 2 or 3 times throughout college. We kind of found our own little circles of people, and kind of found our own cliques, I guess you would say. But he was like gung ho ecstatic about the Final Destination, and he went on this whole tangent with me about it's. Yeah, I'm so excited about it. It's gonna be in 3D, and it's it's gonna be the final one. And I told him it's not gonna be the final one. And he's like, no, no, it is. That's how they're advertising it. I'm like, no, no, learn your horror history, my friend. Even though he wasn't my friend, but that's another story altogether, that we won't go over in this video. Um, Throughout the history of the genre, they have advertised pieces as being the final one just as a marketing ploy, just so that it would get people in the theater to see, oh, how is the series going to end? When, if you have any business sense at all, you would know that the only way these series end is if they stop making money. So if the final one does really really good, new beginning, Friday 5, let's go. Nightmare 7, let's go. Friday 10, let's go. So it's just a marketing gimmick. That's all this is. And I finally watched the movie. Um, I I must admit that history ended up proving that the Final Destination series beat Halloween series at the box office that season. Um, and part of it, I think, was that it was in 3D. I think had Halloween been shot in 3D, it might have had a better shot. But people were also Rob Zombie's Halloween was incredibly divisive in the fandom, so people were upset about it. I was one of the few people who I think was actually legitimately excited about his Halloween 2, and I will go up to bat and defend that. I think it's actually a really good sequel, and I prefer it to the original of the remake. I'm saying I prefer it to Rob Zombie's Halloween. I think his second one is a lot better. I think part of it is you're more used to his world by that point. Anyway, this ain't no video about Halloween 2. This is about Final Destination 4, also known as the worst one. So, I finally... Well, okay, and my point ended up proving true because 5 came out a mere 2 years later. So, Final won my ass. I finally watched it. I'm like, okay, is there going to be anything in this movie, in this entry, that will make you think, oh, this could be an ending? And the answer is freaking hell no. Hell no. I hope the guy felt foolish when he finally watched it. I don't even know if he went to see it. I hope he didn't go and see 5. I hope he stopped supporting the series in protest of continuing making these dumb movies. So, anyway, history lesson over. Doesn't feel like a final entry at all. It just feels like the next one. That's what they should have called it. Final Destination 4, the next one. Why hasn't a horror movie series done that before? That just seems like self-parody. I mean, great title. I'd go and see it. Okay, so I took some notes because I didn't see this as a teenager, even though it came out when I was still a teenager. It came out when I was 19. I saw it as a 34-year-old man. So, would I have liked it as a teenager? I don't think so. I probably would have liked the 3D. I'm a sucker for 3D. I know it's a gimmick, but I like the gimmick. I think it's fun. And these types of movies, they're spectacle, but they're also campy. They're meant to be almost like amusement park rides. Ooh, look at this. Look at that. So the idea of them doing 3D is fine. This genre lends itself perfectly for a 3D viewing experience. Now, having said that, I watched this movie twice. I watched it. I'm one of the few people in America to this day who still has a 3D TV at home. So I was able to watch it in 3D first, which is the only way you should ever watch this movie. And then I watched it in 2D on a 75-inch screen. I'm telling you, this is the worst 3D movie I have ever seen. Because the conversion to 2D is so dramatic, it looks awful. Just awful. The Final Destination, I'm going to go on record and say this is the worst 3D movie ever made. It is garbage. And even in Final Destination terms, which we know that the entire series is garbage, but this is the stinkiest garbage of all. This is the one that you put your crap in and then it was burning. Garbage typically always smells abysmal. That's what Final Destination 4 is. Even the fandom hates it. Like, I don't think I could think of a single person or review online that would say this was their favorite. Oh, please. Unless that guy who I thought was an idiot said that. So anyways, notes time. Let me look at my notes because there were quite a few notes. Oh, okay. So near the end of the movie, we find out in this premonition, which again, this is another freaking rando that we know nothing about. It doesn't try to explain it at all why he's getting a premonition. I guess the only thought was let's even it out because 2 and 3 had a female character having a premonition and 1 had a male. So if 4, let's have 2 men, 2 women having the premonition. Wonder what they'll do with 6. That's coming out next week. Not important. So, anyway, he has the premonition and he sees a bunch of people die at a racetrack. which in 3D, even though you can still tell that it looks awful, it's still kind of fun in 3D. Um, but there's a character that they thought had died who hadn't died. And he was waking up out of a coma. And there's this one healthcare worker who, the floor above has one of those kind of like therapy baths, like the big metal bath that you fill water in, which is another Halloween 2. If you remember the original, you would remember that scene from 1981. But anyways, the healthkeeper worker, not the healthkeeper, the healthcare worker gets called away and is like the worst healthcare worker ever because he leaves the water running. I mean, I know the old man was like a racist asshole to him, but turn the freaking water off. How hard is that to remember? Well, we don't have to get into that, but I have some stories about people not turning the faucet off. Anyways, this healthcare worker leaves the water running to the point that the tub literally falls through the ceiling and crushes the guy to death. Why? 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 Were they expecting people to laugh at this movie? I think they were. I think this one's like way campy in comparison to the other three. There's also a moment. This is like right around that same time in the movie when the lead guy who's having the premonition, he's talking with another guy who's like a security guard at the the racetrack, and they're talking in an elevator, and people hear that the guy tried to kill himself, and like, well, first off, why would you have this conversation in an elevator full of other people? Wouldn't you think that's a pretty private conversation? But no, they just have it, and everyone kind of like is like this. Like, nobody even flinches, and there's freaking doctors on that elevator. Worst doctors ever. So they end up going to a 3D movie because, in case you forgot, the movie's in 3D. And the title is Lovelace Dying, which I don't. That sounds like it's meant to be a romance or something like that, but it just looks like an action movie when you see it. But yeah, thank you, Final Destination 4 in 3D, for reminding me that I am watching a 3D movie while I have 3D glasses on my forehead. Thanks for that. It was so engaging, I would have forgotten that they were there. Anyways, the movie theater is another premonition moment. Spoilers. Spoilers. I mean, don't watch this movie. Just don't. So just go with me on this. Movie theater repeats a bunch of phrases from the racetrack premonition. But given the fact that ultimately nothing happens, that premonition, again, does not come true, the repeating of the lines is just stupid. It's dumb. I don't buy it. I don't like it. This is not the first entry where there was two premonitions, because that belongs to the third one. But it is the first entry where there was two escape from death premonitions, where a number of people end up getting saved from this potential disaster. And anyways, our lead guy, he's trying to be like, which theater is this girl in that I'm in love with? because, he's in love and Lovelace dying, in case you forgot about that. And he's like, I don't know which theater to go into. And because the movie is about as subtle as stepping on a nail, it's in theater 13. Subtle movie. Subtle. There's a moment after the first premonition where this character, our main character, sees something on this table at this restaurant, kind of like a cafe, that says, it's coming. Ooh, ominous. Scratched on the table. At the very end of the movie, you see it's coming is scratched out on the table, and it then, in bigger letters, says, it's here. So, total spoilers for the ending. Not that you should care. Not that anybody should care. Here's the thing, though, is that the ending brings up the questions. If, the lead guy says, maybe it was Death's plan all along for me to have 2 premonitions, that I escaped death only for me to die this time. Which, that doesn't make any sense. That doesn't make any logical sense. I don't buy that. I don't like that. Why did Death give him the 2 other premonitions if he was just supposed to die in the cafe anyways? Is Death just a great big tease? Okay, another thing to really make note of is there's some CGI in this movie, which when you watch it in 3D, the fact that it's kind of in 3D it didn't really bother me. I don't think it would bother most people because you're kind of like, ooh, I like 3D. But when you watch it in 2D, it is the worst CGI in a movie I think I've ever seen. It looks like a video game from the 90s. And I think some of those video games had better graphics than this movie did. Because nobody cared. Nobody cared when they were watching this movie. It's when you watch this movie, you realize no one cared. The writer didn't care. Director didn't care. The cast certainly didn't care. Nobody cared when they were making this movie. They thought, we'll just shoot it in 3D and it will make gangbusters. We'll do great at the box office. And the sad reality is that's exactly what happened. Now, the legacy of 4 is that it's by far the worst one, and honestly, you probably could skip it. I don't endorse skipping any entry in any franchise ever, but if you're one of those people that only want to watch the good ones, which we know by now, there ain't no such thing as a good Final Destination movie, this is one that you should skip. There's the lead girl is from freaking One Tree Hill, yo. Season 7 through 9. Yeah, I did watch all of One Tree Hill. Yes, I was bothered by the creepy show creator, and no, I am never going to watch that show ever again. Thank you for asking, but no, I didn't have a big affinity for it from the first place. But this girl, I watched, I'm like, who is this girl? Why does she look so familiar? And it was like, oh, she was in the last 3 seasons of One Tree Hill that nobody watched because Chad Michael Murray and Hilary Burton had left by that point in the show. I mean, I don't want to throw too much shade at her, but she's the worst one out of all of them in the whole movie. And nobody cared the entirety of the movie, but you watch her performance and she's doing the bare minimum, y'all. you watch some of her line deliveries, and it's like she's reading it off a cue card for the first time. Like she doesn't know the words that are coming out of her mouth. Did she just need to take a nap? Were they just shooting like long days and she just was so tired and exhausted working on a TV show and this 3D movie? Here's another history lesson for you. For all of those people out there who claim that Final Destination 2 is a freaking masterpiece, which it's not, and that obviously that director must have known what they were doing. Guess what? I'm about to blow your mind, y'all. The director of Final Destination 2 is the same director of The Final Destination in 3D. This one that we're talking about. The one that everyone hates. The one that is by far the worst of the entire franchise. And the only reason he decided to do this project was so he could shoot something in 3D? Sounds like he didn't know Jack, did he? Conclusion. In conclusion, Your Honor, don't watch this. Do not watch this unless you are lucky enough to see it in 3D. And even if you are, it'll be the worst 3D movie you ever saw. This movie is a piece of trash. But having said that, and yes, I do think it's a worse movie than the first one. Having said that, I would still rather rewatch this one in 3D on the 3D TV than rewatch the original. This series sucks. I'm glad it's over. Wait, what? The final one wasn't the final one? There's a fifth one in 3D. See you next week, y'all.